Feeling really stressed out in your business? Well, guess what? We're going to show you how to take that stress and turn it into a strength. And if you stick with us to the end, we're going to give you some key resources you can use right now to make that transformation. And welcome back to another Blunt Force Business. I'm Brian Fauci.
And I'm Patrick Marino.
And today we are going to talk to you about stress, because we're all stressed out all the time. And we're going to work on turning that stress into your strength. So let's jump right in, like we always do, with our 3 blunt force facts we're going to hit you with today. So blunt force fact number 1 is stress is inevitable, but stagnation is optional.
Yeah, so there's no avoiding the stress. Things are going to happen in your life, outside of your business, in your business. They're going to cause you some consternation. So the idea is, what can you do with that? Can you turn it into a positive? Can you use it as a force for good?
That was a big word, consternation, by the way. I like that.
Consternation, sorry. I was trying to come up with
dropping big words
right off the gate. I was trying to come up with something besides
Woo!
Stress. You know, you can't use the word to define itself.
Oh, you did well. You did well. All right, blunt force fact number 2. Pressure shapes diamonds.
I mean, this is the same thing, right? I mean, I think that we all know circumstances where we've gone through something difficult and it's made us better. It's the same thing with stress. We need to look at the stresses in our business and in our lives as things that can make us better.
And then blunt force fact number 3 for today is true growth lies outside of your comfort zone.
Yeah, so similarly here, we are talking about the fact that we want to take the stresses that we go through as business owners, as dads, as people in our life. We want to use that as an opportunity to maybe confront things that we haven't confronted before. And I think that that's a big part of what you have to do as an organization too. Actually, Brian, we've addressed this in previous videos. We talk about doing this organizationally, like taking on specific projects that you know are going to be difficult or challenging as a way to grow. Because without that challenge, without having to overcome an obstacle, whether it be stress or whatever it is, you're not going to grow.
Awesome. So we're going to jump into this today. We're separate today. We're usually side by side, and today, unfortunately, some illness has prevented that, and so we're coming to you separate. So this is like, you know what it's like, Patrick? It's like the have you seen Pardon the Interruption? Do you ever watch that show on ESPN?
I know. Obviously, I know what it is.
You know what I'm talking about
before.
So they never went back to side by side, and if they, or maybe they have, and I haven't seen it, but I watch episodes now. Every once in a while, I'll put it on, and they are still coming to you from like 2 separate locations, and I think they realize like, hey, we could do this same thing right out of our home and get the same impact. So. I'm hoping that doesn't happen for us. You know what I mean? I enjoy getting together with you, and so I'm hoping this isn't too convenient.
I'm sure our viewers have consumed plenty of content where the 2 people weren't in the same room.
Right. It's amazing what
I'm just hoping that when we're through with this, we don't have to throw it away because our technology didn't work.
Oh yeah. Well, if that's the case, then no one's going to hear this conversation. So if you're hearing this conversation, we're teched up, baby, teched up.
I mean, this is a way that this is already a stressful thing for me, right? And I think that that's part of it. You know what I mean? We're taking our stress head on. We're not sure if this is going to work. It could be a perfectly good waste of our time, but hopefully this works out. And if it does, I mean, if we get through this, then we've got this other option for creating content.
Absolutely. And there is no waste of time when time is spent with you, my friend. So there's no such thing as a waste of time. How romantic is that? All right, let's get people into this. Sorry, blunt force fact, if we haven't lost them already with our delve down our technology woes. All right, so the blunt force fact, it's all about stress today. So what's the problem, right? So we're trying to, I think you got to right off the gate talk about the fact that, is there a point in time where stress becomes detrimental? And the obvious answer to that is yes. I mean, stress is a constant of life. We live under a bit of it at all points in times, right? So there are like certain pieces of stress that will always be there in our life, and at other times it's going to be a lot more. So we know that this is a thing, and we always, well, I don't know about you, but so many people in my life, and I always hear them say, oh, I'm so stressed. I'm just so stressed. I just can't wait. I mean, I'm sure you hear the same. I'm sure it's the same for you?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, I think that sometimes people wear their stress right out in the open so you can see it. It's in their eyes, it's in their actions, it's in their movements. Yeah, it can be a debilitating thing for sure.
And I think we always refer to it that way. I mean, to me, that's the interesting thing about as we go through today's podcast, I think our viewers are going to agree right out the gate that, yeah, of course, stress is one of the key things that drives like innovation and moving forward. And it's when you're young, it's what gets you to study for the test, right? You're stressed about it. It's coming up. I'm stressed. Everything gets us to move at work. It gets us. But the reality is we always look at it in this light of avoidance, trying to avoid it, eliminate it, do whatever we can. I get a little bit in the lines of the drive reduction theory, which is a psychology theory. It kind of deals with, that's all we do in our life is try to like alleviate that. So today,
maybe you can talk about that a little bit more. I've never heard of that. Explain that again.
Oh, I'm gonna go blank on who the psychologist was, and we'll look it up and we'll throw it in the comments below when the video goes. But one of the psychologists of the 20th century talked about drive reduction theory, and that being that we live in this perpetual state of just trying to alleviate stress, for lack of a better word, right? Get to an equilibrium. And so we can relate to that pretty easy in the sense that think about hunger as a drive, right? Which can be stressful if you're really hungry. So hunger's the drive. And so until we get that drive met, we're in this state of anxiety. And, the basic ones are the, eat, drink, sleep, but they also exist at the higher level of functioning as well, where if the drive might be a deadline or an upcoming project you're working on, whatever it might be. In our business lives, it could be growing the bottom line and, making the bank account look bigger or whatever that might be. But everything we do exists in this realm of where everything external to us is a drive that we are trying to reduce, if that makes sense. And that's the general theory of that principle, of that drive reduction theory. Did I explain that okay?
I think so. Yeah. It makes total sense. I mean, stress is what motivates us, but also holds us back. And I think that one of the things that we have to do, just as humans, as business leaders, just to get through life, is be able to recognize the difference between the type of stress that we already have in place to make us better. I mean, one of those could be, and a lot of that's intentional, right? So we take on a project, or we take on a new team member, or we try to learn a new skill. So that puts us under stress because we don't know how to do those things. And then the other types of stress, which are a little bit more difficult to deal with, and we've all dealt with, the stresses that we haven't all dealt with. Some of us are a little bit more privileged than others, but certainly food security is a big one. But I'm thinking, like, as a business owner, like, the stress of not being able to meet payroll, and then what does that do to you? Because business isn't good because you're in a slump, or because of a seasonal thing, or because of a change in the market. That's a way different type of stress than, say, the stress of just trying to, again, learn something new because it's going to make you better.
But it's a drive. It's still a drive.
Yeah, for sure.
And I think we're going to delve into, as we get into this podcast, we're going to delve into some things that our listeners can do to kind of compartmentalize and reduce some of these drives in order to move the needle, right? And move things forward. But I think to start us out, more importantly, are we creating our drives is the discussion. Are you creating those drives in your company that will force you to get a little anxious and then act. And this is where that first blunt force fact is important, because we can get stagnant. We can get very stagnant if we don't create the drive for ourselves. And by how do you create a drive? Maybe you got to put a little pressure on yourself. Well, how do you do that? Well, we can think of a couple different examples of that. Maybe you've been teetering back and forth between a hire. Like, I'm going to make this hire because I want to bridge this gap. But, well, we all know why people wouldn't make that hire. Okay, they wouldn't make the hire maybe because it's gonna put me in a little more of a financial pickle. Right, make things a little more tight. And right now, they're really comfortable. We're making money, bank account's growing. Now, I know that this hire could potentially grow us further, but I risk that financial comfort going away. Or maybe it's a software investment, or maybe, we can go down or equipment investment. And if I buy this piece of equipment, it might make life easier for me, but it also now comes with that financial burden. If you, one of the things that you'll notice in all those examples, they all tied together by one thing, which usually is what? And Patrick, I'll let you kind of like what. What do you think?
Money? Are you getting at money?
It's all right. So, ironically, I think in our business lives and in almost all things, even if you talk about food insecurity, a lot of times, sometimes it does come down to availability, but a lot of times it comes down to the financial ability to attain the food. So, so much of our drive reduction is built on money and decisions, but sometimes we got to make those decisions to move the needle. And I think sometimes we don't, out of stagnation. And that is, to me, a flaw to really looking at our business as a growth-based business.
Right, for sure. I think one of the things you're kind of hinting at here is that you have to almost, like, reducing stress is almost about practicing taking on stress, which kind of fits into a lot of the things we talk about, which is being intentional about challenge and taking on challenge, seeing it as an opportunity versus something that you could fail at, right? Rather than making excuses and saying, okay, we're going to fail, and being afraid of that. You look at everything as opportunity, right? Any potential for failure, any potential for taking on challenges and taking on stress, look at those as opportunities for growth. And, I can think of a ton of examples of that, in our own personal business. I mean, like, even to a certain extent, this project that we've got here with Blunt Force Business, we have taken on some stress, whether I can remember the first time we created one of these videos, we were going to put it out. And I had an issue where my upload speed in my house I'd never really tested the upload speed before. Right. And we did everything you're supposed to do. Right. We were really well prepared. We recorded it.
That's right. We had the launch date. We had the video was going to drop at a certain time. Yes.
We prepared people because there's a thought process in the algorithm that if you get people to watch the video as close as possible to when it's launched, that it will juice the algorithm a little bit and help it spread. And we had it all planned down to the minute, and we prepared people. We had social media. We had everything going. And I tried to upload the video, and it took like a day and a half to upload because I hadn't really I have an internet connection here, obviously. I mean, I work from home. It's never been a problem, but I'd never tried to upload something that large. And I remember texting you and saying, "Oh, it's just not going to get up. We had to post things or whatever it is, right?" So, I mean, that was stressful. It's something we took on, but. Here we are, talking to our thousands and thousands of followers now who are watching our content, and we had to kind of overcome that, so we took that on deliberately. We took it on because we took it on for the opportunity for growth. We see an opportunity here. We see an opportunity from our relationship and how it's working out. We took it on, but there's certainly been moments of stress in this whole thing.
And so when you create that stress for yourself as you're going into this, you want to create strategic stress. for which I can probably come up with a better term for, but we'll go with strategic stress right now, because you want to think it through. You want to eliminate the low-hanging fruit that would be cause for failure. But it should teeter that line. If something isn't teetering the line of being a bit risky, it's probably not going to bear a ton of fruit. That's the reality of it. And it probably isn't going to. So you go through the process, you go through the business planning process, you evaluate, you think through, you do all those things that we've talked about in other videos, right? And then you create some stress for yourself. You purposefully to say, we're going to go down this road and we're going to create a little drive reduction theory action here. And then once you do that, then it's a combination of, okay, now I need to manage that appropriately so that the stress doesn't turn into something that overwhelms you, right? That causes you to, go down the road of non-productivity where we just can't, we're frozen, right? Or be reactive. Frequent response to stress is a reactive response to something that might not be in the best interest, isn't thought out, okay? And doing all that. So as we kind of delve in a little bit, how can you then, after you've created it, kind of manage it and put that pressure on yourself to create the diamond, like the blunt force fact says, but be able to still move and not be paralyzed by it, not go home at the end of the day and feel like you have no bandwidth for anything else. Because that's the other piece of this I think that's really important, is that if we don't manage it well when we create it, then we're useless to everybody else in our life. And I think we can feel that a lot. So one of the big things, and Patrick, I'll let you kind of jump in with some things, but for me, the number one thing that helps me manage the stress that I put on myself with expectation is physical activity and sleep. I've incorporated like some really good sleep routines, and those two things, when those things are on and I'm doing those well, when I'm blocking time in my calendar for physical activity and blocking out sleep time and really making sleep like a conscious effort, it's amazing what that allows me to produce during the day in those moments of stress and strain.
I mean, just to build on that, you and I know that I've been through some personal stress recently, and I really had one of the reasons why I think I let it affect me a little bit more was because I felt like I was unable to participate in physical activity. So I am a man of a certain age. I think I tested myself a little bit too much at the end of the year. I hurt my shoulder pretty badly while I was lifting weights, which is a huge way that, again, staying in shape, engaging in physical activity as a way of reducing stress, I think is important as well. But I hurt myself, so I couldn't lift weights. And then I was playing soccer, and I probably ruptured my Achilles tendon. And so now I'm unable to lift weights, and I'm unable to, ride my bike or do anything active. And I think that really hurt my ability to deal with the stress that I was working through. I think it's a real example of, and what I've done is I've had to kind of reincorporate things I can do while I'm healing, because I definitely let stress affect my life a little bit more because of all those challenges that I was going through, like all the things that I couldn't do, so it's like you almost have to now you have to overcome that and say, okay, well, why am I so stressed out? Why am I letting this affect my mood and all those different things? So I've had to kind of, pivot a little bit to things that can help me replace that while I'm healing. I'm not, hopefully I'll be able to walk again, and hopefully I'll be able to lift weights again and all those different things. But in the meantime, I've had to pivot to do something else active, because without that, I definitely felt the difference.
Yeah, that's a huge one for me. And then the other piece, and this was something that I wasn't doing a lot of, and I shouldn't say that because I was doing it in some form, but the other piece is just getting involved in some mindful type practices. And there's so much research out there on this, and just refocusing in, right, on your breathing, on how you're feeling, on where you are in that space. as rejuvenation. And I do it, I've done it in the form of yoga, but then when I don't go to a yoga class, which may be like once or twice a week, I don't do it. So in essence, I'm only doing it once or twice a week. And I think I'm experiencing the stress of the pressure that we're putting on ourselves, on our growth and on, everything we got going on a daily basis. So, if I'm maybe working out once 4 or 5 times a week, that's leaving me with this gap of 3 or 4 days when I'm not taking any active steps like this to really kind of focus in and reset and kind of manage my emotional reaction to things, manage where we are, reset on and focus inward, which is sometimes when you're driving, the interesting thing about drive reduction, it's very externally focused. So drive reduction is this external thing that is pressing you to move in a direction. The food is the obvious one, so easy to understand, right? So this hunger, and now I got to go and find, get the food, find the food, eat the food, and then it goes away, right? So it's all these acts and these steps, but never once during that time am I like being reflective, right? I'm really just trying to seek out the thing that alleviates the stress. On a daily basis at work, we might be doing the same thing with how we're driving at, like, got to talk to the next client. Like, do you know people that do these, like, they'll have 6 hours of their day is outreach client calls every 30 minutes to drive at like a sales goal?
I mean, I know people like that. I've never really walked a mile in their shoes to a certain extent. I don't really know what that life is like. I know I couldn't do it. I will kind of expand upon a couple of your points though. One of the things I think about mindfulness is I feel like it can be intimidating as a term because, I think that when we think about mindfulness frequently, we think about, obviously we think about meditation and we think about maybe influencers. We think about people we listen to are podcasters, these ultra successful people who are engaged in meditation. I think that can be stressful, right? Thinking about ultra successful people and their habits and thinking like, how can I incorporate freaking cold plunge and freaking sauna and freaking working out and all that? And meanwhile, like I own a business and I have kids and I have other financial responsibilities, and I just don't have time for any of that nonsense. And so I think that in terms of mindfulness, it's important. I think that there are other ways to be mindful besides doing all those different things. And I think one of them you can do is just have a conversation with somebody. And when you have a conversation with that person is just put your phone away and really just focus on what they're talking about. I think the idea of being mindful is just this consciousness of what you're doing in the moment, right? It doesn't have to be, it's great if you can practice it as meditation, but I think if you're intimidated by that, I think that just this idea of having a conversation with somebody and really focusing on that person and trying to put out of your mind all the other things that are happening in life can be a really good practice. And I think that's one of the things I've tried to do in substitute for maybe intentional meditation, just intentional mindfulness. Mindfulness from the aspect of just the actual word and what it means. Being mindful, being present in where you're at that time. Put your phone down, don't look at it. Try to think about the stresses, try and really focus on what's happening wherever you're at. I think that makes a huge difference.
I agree. And one of the things that we talk about when doing that is time blocking with it and making sure we're getting it on the calendar. And just making sure we're setting aside like the time to do that stuff. One of the things that helps me that way is dog walking. Dog walking to me is very meditative, right? Going out, and obviously nature walks can be very meditative. And so I'll get on my calendar, if I have a really busy day, the midday activity will be to take my dog for a walk. And then, that gets me completely reset for that second half of the day and to deal with whatever I'm trying to accomplish in that second half of the day. So I love that. Right.
Well, besides setting time out for mindfulness or just stress alleviation. Time blocking, I think, by itself helps reduce stress, because one of the challenges, I think, especially for a busy adult, right? You've got, whether you're a business owner or whether you're just working or whether you've got kids or whatever you've got a spouse, right? You've got a dog, you've got all these different responsibilities, and just that all, if you think too much about all those things that are going on, or you think about like what's going on in the world, right? What's going on with the election coming up and all of a sudden like that, all of those different things together can be intimidating. So one of the ways you can alleviate that stress, rather than blocking out just time for yourself to be mindful, would be just blocking out the things that your responsibilities, right? And taking a list and say, okay, here are my clients. Here are the things I have to do next Tuesday. Here are all the things that I have to do. Here are all the steps I need to take, and now schedule each thing out. And then what you can do is you can then take these things that all seem unmanageable and break them down into manageable steps. And just that ability and doing it in time and say, okay, Tuesday morning I'm going to work on these client projects. Tuesday afternoon I'm going to make my phone calls. Tuesday after lunch I'm going to work on paperwork. You know what I mean? Just scheduling that all out so that now you've got a system in place, and now you've taken away a lot of the stress of that situation, right? The stress of the unknown, the stress of the responsibilities piling up and you not feeling like you have control over it. That lack of control is what adds to stress. And now what you've done is you've taken control over that. And then as we've talked about in the past, as you get these small wins, these little periods where you've actually accomplished something, that helps you breathe a little bit better and alleviate a lot of your stress that you've put on yourself just by allowing these things to accumulate. So I think that's not just blocking out time to being mindful and to do things to alleviate stress. I think it's blocking out your time in general to help you can control all those processes that you've got going on.
And within your organization too, we want to do two things purposefully. And one is we want to challenge and put pressure on ourselves and the people that work for us, whether it be contractors or our traditional W-2 employees. Nobody really enjoys, no matter what they say, sitting in a work environment where they are not challenged. They will get bored and they will eventually look for the next challenge because they will feel mundane in what they're doing. So pressure and challenge to your workforce it's not just like, okay, it's almost a necessity. So you got to push them, you got to drive at them, and you got to give them reasons to challenge themselves. But then, Patrick, to your point, I think then you need to incorporate wellness into the holistic culture of your organization. So that now you're putting these pressures on them and you're pushing forward, but you're also at the same time, you're giving them the outlets to be successful in that pressure, to have the space to break away. So, flexible work schedules and health and wellness within your company, and purposeful within your company, like built in and it's there, and not just, hey, you can take advantage of it. Like, hey, you got to do this, right? So you got to, from 12 to 1, nobody works, right? I want you out, get out of the office if you're in a traditional office space or whatever it may be. Or, we're going to schedule a monthly massage for each one of our employees. And they're going to go and right. So we're going to do these things so that it's clear that we encourage this within the space. So we push them, but we give them the outlet as well. I think all that stuff is extremely important. As we're kind of getting towards the end here, Patrick, is there any other piece that, we've established the fact that we got to create the stress, we got to create the drives, and then we got to manage that stress and drives both for ourselves and our employees. Is there anything else that you want to kind of bring into this?
I mean, obviously, this is a big subject that we could talk about over the course of and some of the things that we talked about, we've addressed in other videos as well. But I think that if everybody has their strengths and weaknesses. And I think one of my strengths is being able to be successful under pressure, but also not demonstrate stress externally, right? So whether I was coaching or whether I was teaching or when I'm parenting or when I'm dealing with people that I'm working with, people never get the sense that I'm stressed. In fact, when I say that I'm stressed, sometimes people are surprised, right? And I think that the amount of stress that you let take over your life is a choice, right? That's a choice, right? If you're stressed out, being stressed out in some senses is a choice, especially when you take into account all the things we've talked about, food insecurity, war. These are things to really be stressed about, right? These are things that really be, and the more you can manage them, and the more you have strategies to take the challenges that have caused you stress, the better off you're going to be. But I think that for me, it's about prioritizing things. We talk a lot about things that you can control and things that you can't control, right? List out all the things that are causing you stress. What things are completely out of your control? Like, for example, like what's, and this is maybe, I don't know if this is the right way of putting it, but like the climate changing, right? So it's like, if you let climate change affect your daily mood, it's going to be a huge issue for you because it's such a big problem that maybe there's a small thing that you can do to help, and that will help you alleviate the stress, but it's not something that you can do a whole lot about. But there are things that you have complete control over, such as your calendar, such as your schedule, such as your habits, your individual habits, your daily habit. It might be as simple as making your bed, cleaning your room, organizing your clients. You understand their priorities and stuff like that. To me, like, these are the things that you can control, and the better off you are at controlling all the things that you can control and optimizing those and having steps to do that. I think it just makes a huge difference in your stress levels. And then also, if you are leading an organization, can you, through your own, whether it's mindfulness, whatever you have to do, can you insulate your team from your stress, right? Because you want to have at least the external, you want people to feel like you're in control if you're leading people, right? Because it's so important, because then they have the confidence, okay, well, the boss has control, or the person I'm working with is in control. They're not stressed. So I'm stressed about it. There's a certain inclination in me and everything I do, which is sort of it's like a fuck it. Like there's only so much I can do. You know what I mean? There's only so many places I can be. There's only so much I can control the situation. So if it fails, like fuck it. But do the best you can. You know what I mean? And really that's all you can do. And I think that when you have that attitude, when you've done the work in your head, control the things you can control, prioritize, and then control the things you can control to the best of your ability, there's not much else you can do about that. And I think that the better you do that, the less stressful you will actually feel as well.
It's like the chapter in the book, Paint by Numbers, The Art of Fatherhood. Control what you can.
Control the uncontrollable.
Control what you can, and fuck the rest.
Yeah, I think that's like been a guiding process, and it's been guiding my probably my whole life to a certain extent.
Oh, it's a very internal.
And there's negatives that I think that some people, when you come across as unstressed and unbothered, some people can feel that as like a lack of passion and a lack of caring.
Yeah, I get that.
Which is like the other side of that.
Yeah.
But I think that it serves you when it needs to serve you. You know what I mean? Like, and you need to communicate. Like, hey, this is something that, believe it or not, I'm stressed out about. But there's only so much I can do about it. There's only so much we can do about it. We have to do the best we can. Be prepared. Come up with contingencies in case something goes wrong. And we're going to get after it. And I think that's the best way to do it.
Love it. Good stuff for today. All right, blunt force facts. Blunt force fact number 1, stress is inevitable. Stagnation is optional. So create your stress. Create some stress in your environment to move things forward. Blunt force fact number 2, pressure shapes diamonds. So you can't make anything great without putting a little bit of pressure and stress into your world. And blunt force fact number 3, growth lives outside the comfort zone. So get yourself there and then use the tools that we talked about today to help you manage that stress, keep it in its buckets, and move things forward. I'm Brian Fauci.
Patrick Marino.
Until next time.
Thank you.